Now, how about the actual fitness activity? Do you view that as pleasurable? Even
No,
though it's like painful while you're doing it, sure, and it's uncomfortable while you're doing it, sure. How do you feel after you do it?
satisfied. Like, okay, work's done.
Work's done.
Accomplished. Accomplished. I don't want to say accomplished. That's a big word, but just like I don't want to say relieved. It's like I did what I came to do.
Okay. Do you feel like that it provides a good foundation? I mean, I'm interested in getting to the self-discipline part of it.
Fitness is not a foundation for me whatsoever. So for me, discipline is a foundation. And I'm like, if I can be disciplined in one area, there's no reason I can't be disciplined in another. So it's not foundational at all.
Okay, so you feel like you already have stores of the discipline to do this.
Correct.
Okay. Tell me about where you got that. That's interesting to me. The development of discipline.
I That's a great question. Part of it has to be ingrained, or at least for a long time. I'm a very productive person.
Hmm.
So I only need to work 2 hours a day to work, right?
Okay. So you're an efficient person.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, then there's the difference between busyness and productivity. You're highly productive and efficient if you can work 2 hours a day.
right,
Right.
right. So where does the discipline come from? I don't know. I mean, it's also the same thing. Like, for example, I am very strong willpower when it comes to people telling me what to do. Like,
Hmm.
part of the reason I'm an anarchist is like, for example, I had a job and they said, you have to, I had made this is a long time ago, Goldman Sachs. My great grandmother had come in, had died, excuse me. And I promised my grandmother I'd have Thanksgiving with her, even though we're Russian, Thanksgiving's not the major holiday.
Right.
And they said, well, we have you on the schedule to come in on Thanksgiving. And I said, well, sorry, I promised my grandmother I'm not going to come in. And honestly, if I asked her to come in, like to go to dinner instead of lunch, she wouldn't have cared.
Right.
But the principle of the thing, I'm not doing this for the sake of your fucking company. And they're like, well, if you don't come in, you're going to lose your job. We need someone here. And I'm just like, okay. And it never even entered my head to cave. Right. So I think at a certain point, there's just a certain mindset, which is like, I am not going at all to be pressured, or the pressure is not going to affect me whatsoever. It's like if you're telling me if you don't do X, therefore Y, but X wasn't at any point an option.
Okay. So
It just
what you're describing is kind of integrity, right?
Well, hopefully, yeah.
Okay. Which
But
I
I mean, I don't even want to give it the credit of integrity because integrity is like you're tempted but you reject it. But
okay.
with me, it's like if someone's like comes at me yelling and it's trying to pressure me, it doesn't have any effect. I'm just like, okay, it's just noise to me. So it's not even like I have the I can sit here and say I'm a great person. And I'm like, oh, I stood up to them. It was just like this is just barking. I don't understand. This is not going to affect my choice in any way.
Interesting. Very interesting.
That's
So
always a euphemism.
it's better than saying right? When I don't
Is
know
it?
what to say. Yeah, I think it is
I don't
because
think it is because interesting sounds like there's a value judgment that you're biting your tongue about.
mm-mm,
It does.
I don't
I'm
know what
telling
to
you.
do with it. I don't know what to do with it
Okay.
because I see myself, I put myself in your shoes and I see a real possibility of me caving in that situation or going to the person that I know better and I feel more comfortable and asking them to be flexible when I encounter an inflexibility.
And here's the other thing. It might have been better for me to cave. Do you know what I mean?
Hmm.
So I'm not even saying that this is something that's a great quality. I'm just saying this is something that is a quality.
But you feel like you can apply this to, like, if you have a voice in your head that says, even though these are the things you're supposed to do, I mean, you must have a voice that says, not today. I'm not
About
doing
Give me an example.
the writing or the actual fitness activity. There
No,
must be some kind of voice of resistance.
no, no, no.
Never.
No, there is some marginally because here's the thing. A lot of my time as an author, which is like part of my probably until recently one of my biggest source of income, is a lot of it is waiting.
Hmm.
So if I am working on a project, I have to write a proposal,
Hmm.
send it to the agent. I gotta wait for him. He sends it back. I send it back to him. I gotta wait. He sends it to all the editors. I gotta wait. Then when a book's done, I have to wait for the editor's response. There's literally nothing I can do to speed up this process, right?
Hmm.
However, my brain, my caveman brain, is yelling resource scarcity. Do something, do something, do something. How can you sit on your ass? This is a
Right.
natural psychological, and I know this is outdated programming from evolution, right? The correct answer is you have to sit on your ass. It's going, but it's out of your hands. So for me, if I go exercise, I can tell my brain, I did something today, so shut up.
I gotcha. Part of it is chemical, the reward of doing that, but it's also there's some feeling of satisfaction, right? There's a satisfaction. It's very primal. You know you need it, and you get it from doing
I don't know
that.
about satisfaction so much as like what something people don't understand, and it took me a long time to understand, is if you have feelings of depression or anxiety,
Yes.
your brain knows exactly what to say. It's in your head. It's really smart. It knows you better than anyone. And for until you reach a point, you have to realize this voice is your enemy.
Okay, yeah, to be more specific. Like, obviously, our minds can be a great ally if we train them to be, but they kind of start with what's often an adversarial relationship, right? So when you say your brain knows exactly what to say, you mean to not be helpful.
Correct.
Okay.
So writer's block is an example of this. Ayn Rand talked about it. She called it white tennis shoes. She talked about how when she sat down, her brain is giving, because the brain doesn't want to work. The brain wants to reserve resources, right? Correctly, from an evolutionary point of view. So the brain's telling her, you got to do this, you got to do that. And her example was the last thing her brain told her is, you got some white tennis shoes that you need to clean before instead of writing the fountainhead. And she's like, the only answer is to tell her to shut the hell up. Well, that's the same thing. Like this really crystallized to me one time I was exercising and I had like a set to go and my brain's like, oh, go home. You have to do X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, you're lying. Like 30 seconds. How long does a set take? A minute?
Yeah.
And I'm like, holy shit.
Do you remember what it was a set of?
Yeah, it was chest press.
Okay.
And I'm like, this is so insidious how the mind works because it also speaks English. A lot of times when we have anxiety, it just feels like a feeling, right? It's a sensation. But what that sensation often does is have a quite articulate voice. And it takes a long time to be able to realize this is not me that's talking. This is some biochemical, or physiological bullshit that you have to find ways to respond to.
Have you ever heard of IFS, internal family systems?
No.
It's a kind of therapy.
Okay.
The argument, there's actually a really good book about it called The Body Keeps the Score. And it's the idea that as we grow and we experience events that the mind interprets as traumatic, the personality fractures. Like if you're a young child, when far more things are traumatic, like something could happen to you at 6 that would be totally traumatic that, you might be indifferent to when you're 26, right? Okay. So at that point, a split, it sounds a little woo-woo, but neuroscience, I think, is starting to really back this up just by looking at how like different kinds of stimuli affect the amygdala, the emotional part of the brain.
Okay.
But if somebody encounters one of these traumatic situations at age 6, a split in the personality occurs. And the best way that I can explain it, shorthand, is that 6-year-old is kind of stored, right?
Okay.
As a sub-aspect of the personality. So in the book, it talks about the concept of self-leadership, right? That as we become adults, like you and I are both about 40 years old, if we've endured, a range of traumatic events in our first 40 years, we would have these fractured personalities. There would be voices, this voice that you're describing, go home, or the voice that's planting all kinds of destructive ideas in your head, is actually like a weaker part of self.
Okay.
Right. So that's the idea of IFS. I just was curious as to whether or not you had heard of it. I mean, Brandon, and I know you're really familiar with Ayn Rand. Have you read through Brandon's stuff?
When I was in 1997, I was a Cato intern, and we were there giving out seating charts rather, for all the guests. And I insisted on grabbing A through C so I could be there when Brandon came in, and he did. And he comes up to me, he's like, Nathaniel Brandon. I'm like, oh my God, I know who you are. And I went to talk to him later, and he mailed me a copy of his last book, signed copy, to Michael Be Happy. He was very, very cool. So I am very familiar with his work.
So you've read The Six Pillars,
I think I have
Free.
all of them.
Yeah.
Including that terrible one where it's just like people talking at each other. If you could hear what I cannot say.
About relationships.
No, but that one is literally like just pages of dialogue. It's just very weird. And there's like workbooks. It's not a good one.
But the only point is that he was big on this idea of the child self, right? a weaker and less resourceful kind of self. Yeah, fitness is actually an interesting pursuit because, and diet and just like general kind of wellness, because you have to learn to mediate and I think negotiate with those voices a lot in
Well,
that case.
I had Kirsten Hagelin on my show. She's a former Miss America.
Yeah.
Great woman. She just moved to Switzerland. And she talked a lot. She dealt with a lot with eating disorders.
Mm.
And the whole point, a lot of people don't understand this. Eating disorders are not about food. Eating disorders are about control. And this is a lot of times young women get eating disorders because they have no sense of control of their own lives. And this is their application of willpower towards something very essential to their being. So I think that has to do a lot with this stuff, is having that insane need for control over something. So it's not coming from a psychologically healthy place, but it's being channeled in a air quotes healthy way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with eating disorders, that's almost like, as far as like the search for control, it's almost like you're bullying yourself.
But I do think fitness and eating disorders are pretty much Siamese twins.
Siamese twins.
Yeah.
Like you don't think there's any healthy balance that a person can strike with fitness? I would certainly think there would be.
No.
Okay.
Not they're doing it the way I think of doing it.
Is this the only way you've ever done it?
Yeah, I don't know how to do balanced. I don't that word sounds like lefty double talk to me.
Lifestyle balance?
Yeah, I don't know what that means.
Okay, so can we talk about that for a minute?
I believe in priorities and hierarchy. So balance to me is phony. Because that means equality, right? It means two things are equal. It's like, no, pick one.
Maybe it's a shorthand for like a more complicated idea. So let me describe what I think of it as, and you can rip it apart.